Yo, what is going on, Ranger fans? DHR2 Productions back with another content for y'all. So, last night I posted on my community tab that I was going to do some heavy editings when it comes to this topic about Power Rangers. According to the original Rangers from the Saban era, have their say and opinions on this god-awful film you call Power Rangers, which is not Power Rangers, to be honest with you. I think they all share the same thing we had towards the movie, and you know how much I despise this movie the most. I can admit that I was one of those minority of people that actually defended this movie before it came out in 2017. When it came to the costumes, the Zords, the promo cut, I mean, it's so obvious to me that I ended up drawing those Rangers in retro style, in my own style, and my take on it. Once the movie came out, I was excited. I went with my cousin, and we had fun watching it. Even I did, because when I'm a Power Rangers fan, of course I'm going to see it regardless. But even I reviewed that in my old channel. Let's just say I regret seeing this movie after 11 months of thinking and realizing how trash this movie is. It just did not make any sense whatsoever of how you're going to make a movie based on the Mighty Morphin series, and it was still not done right. Because you wait the last Power Rangers movie 30 minutes until we get to a Rangers morph that we could have gotten from the beginning of the movie, and we can't even do that. So I'm a little worried about this Netflix Mighty Morphin Power Rangers reboot. If they went to 30 or 38 minutes to morph for the first time and fight the putties, it's gonna end up being like the rest of the movie. No character development, not enough martial arts fight scenes, not enough action. I've said this 1,000 times in my Power Rangers videos. If you haven't seen them, I'll put that in the description below. Getting back on topic with this 2017 movie, it says original Power Ranger stars open up about their biggest problem with the 2017 reboot at Eccc 2021. Let's get to it. Who better to critique the 2017 Power Rangers movie than two actors from the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series appearing at Emerald City Comic Con this weekend? Walter Jones, the first Black Ranger, and Janelle Bosch, the second Black Ranger, were asked for their thoughts on the recent big-budget adaptation of the beloved TV show that failed to launch a big-screen franchise. Jones said that while he and his kids found it to be entertaining, he still came away with one major giveaway related to Hollywood tendency to take beloved kids franchises and make it their easier for modern audiences. You know, in some degrees, I can understand where you're coming from with this, because sometimes certain childhood franchises should not be the one to mess with, especially when it comes to Power Rangers, because this franchise has a bad track record when it comes to movies not being so good. The public doesn't want Power Rangers on the big screen. They hate Power Rangers. And what the 2017 did shows exactly why Hollywood does not like Power Rangers. Because when you look at the 2017 movie, it did not make sense. These were not the original Power Rangers I grew up with. These felt like 5 different characters who were chosen to be Power Rangers. It's so bad altogether. Like, I'm sorry, I did not like this Power Rangers movie. And when they started using a little bit of politics, you know, when Billy being autistic and Trini being a lesbian, that right there came out of left field for me, because this is basically what Hollywood is doing nowadays. They just love to just add their, you know, assumptions of on their characters that was not needed in the first place. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but at the end of the day, you know, the Power Rangers movie, for me, it was not good. It sucked, and I really hated it altogether. They were teenagers with attitude, but they were a delinquent, he explained. The problem with that, for me, is knowing what the show has done for people. I get to hear your voices now, and you're like, because of your show, I wanted to do this and that. And I became a martial artist. I went into the military, or I was motivated to do this. That was because we were teenagers with attitude. Due to the fact that we were leaders, we were confident. I think that was one of the most important things about the show that they missed, because if you are delinquent and that's your attitude, and you find a magic rock and now you're a Power Ranger, that doesn't do anything to motivate anybody. I couldn't agree more with Walter Jones, man, because in my honest opinion, their characters were not really teenagers with attitude, what they call. I mean, I could get the 2017 movie credit for this one. They did have attitude because they were, you know, cocky, snot-nosed. You know, they looked like a bunch of high school dropouts. They were getting into, you know, detention, and they just went around places out in the middle of nowhere, and at least they were teenagers with attitude. I can give them credit for that. The original show, it pretty much inspired a lot of people to become martial artists, military, scientists, you know, teachers, because of the original show and what it meant to a lot of people. Still to this day, people were inspired by what the show did. I can agree with him more, you know, I think that's what the 2017 movie was lacking the most. You know, motivation, real attitude, and it's starting to show how sometimes when you want to reboot a franchise, you have no business messing with the childhood properties if you're not going to do it right. So, shout out to Walter Jones for this amazing quote. I can agree with him 100%. Bosch praised the film's general aesthetics and cast, which include, his complaints with the mostly had to do with the Zords and the costumes. I was saying the same thing. The Zords and the costumes, they were so bad. You know what, to be fair, like I said in the beginning of the video, I was one of those people that defended this movie because I just liked it because they just were so different. They're similar to the 1995 movie. As a 30-year-old man, after realizing and having some clear thoughts about how ugly those suits were, it just didn't look right. The Zords look terrible. Some of them look good, like the Tricerazord looked great. The Pterazord, I'm not so sure how I feel about the Pterazord, but I think the rest of the Zords look fine. The T-Rex looked a mess. The Tigerzord looked a mess. The so-called Mastodon Zord looked terrible. It looked more like a spider than a Mastodon Zord. I'm not sure it's supposed to be a jet or a dinosaur. I don't know. The Triceratops Zord looked it better. Now, there's the complaints with the Zords and the costumes. I can agree with them 100%. Like I said, I hated the Zords, I hated the costumes, and they still make them so small when Goldar, the not Goldar, was bigger than the Zords. And this is my biggest problem with the 27, you know, so with Power Rangers in Hollywood and their big budget and low budget films. They have a hard time making the robot Zords, especially the Zords, taller than Goldar and the T-Rex Zord. The T-Rex was supposed to be bigger than Goldar, fighting Goldar. The rest of them are just like small sizes. But you could have made the T-Rex Zord bigger than Goldar, the same size. You could have had a moment when the T-Rex Zord, Jason was fighting Goldar. You could have had that moment. But they just chose to just be lazy and just don't care. Then what's the point of you putting out a film that has nothing to do with Power Rangers? Back to the topic. I prefer the suits from our film that we did in 1985 much more because you can tell them apart because of the Zords. I mean, what the Zords looked up like they were supposed to be added. Well, true. I mean, the Zords and CGI looked bad in that movie as well. I mean, let's be real here. I mean, I gotta give the 2017 movie credit again because the Zords looked real, like Transformer Zords. But the 1995 movie, it was ugly. The CGI looked a mess. It looked like it did not match the outside in the dark area. So it just didn't make sense whatsoever. I liked the 1995 Power Rangers costume better because you can recognize the dinosaur theme in the helmets. Unlike the 2017, it was too alienish and you couldn't even recognize the costumes or the Zords. Not to mention it was really too basic, to be honest with you. And showing what Jones said about the unlikable characters, Bosch continued. The Pink Ranger, she was a terrible person. It's like, what's going on here? It was really weird. They are leaning to that and thought, oh yeah, they're just gonna make them bad and they'll just become good because you got powers. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. get abilities or anything like that, if you were a douchebag here, you're also gonna be a douchebag here. I think that's my biggest issue with the movie itself, is that the 90s, yeah, they were your typical and goody two shoes, teenagers and all that. That's one thing I hate about the show and the original Rangers though, but I think the 2017, they pretty much did way too much on teenagers with attitude. But yeah, I'm just not feeling this film altogether. The characters didn't really do anything for me. Although Billy is my favorite character, I like how, you know, he went through a lot. He was the smartest one. He knew what the Zeal crystals were. But the biggest problem I had with this movie is the product placement. We get it. Krispy Kreme this, Krispy Kreme that. Like, I'm tired of this daggone product placement. I thought this film was supposed to be about Power Rangers, not product placement. I feel like I could go on and on about this movie. It's just not good, to be honest with you. Like, I really despise this movie the most. And it's starting to show how much Hollywood really sucked when it comes to just getting back on here. Made on a budget of $100 million. The 2017 Power Rangers movie, directed by Project Almanac Dean Israelite, barely made its money back with a global box office draw of $142 million. Fail. Because, you know what, speaking of Dean Israelite, I do not like this guy. His directing of this Power Rangers movie sucked. Especially towards the third act when the Rangers become Power Rangers for the first time. And the fight scenes only last a few seconds. There were no moments of them doing acrobatic martial arts moves. And the fight scene just felt short. And it just felt like an afterthought. They pretty much just missed the mark on the Power Rangers movie when it comes to the martial arts fight scenes. And this film just lacked everything before the 2017. Honestly, I just feel like Dean Israelite is a bad director. Thank y'all, you got Jonathan Entwistle and the writer of Titan Show are going to be making a Power Rangers movie, which I have faith that they're going to bring us the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the big screen and on the small screen on Netflix with good quality fight scenes. For comparison, the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV show was produced on a shoestring budget, particularly in its early days. In the very beginning of the show, Saban didn't really put a lot of money into it. Jones said, oh, so Jones said that. Okay, this is a good one. With no permit. So we're being in the back of a van and they'll just go jump out and the cameraman will go, ready, action. And then they'll like, jump back in the van and let's go. So they have them jump out of a van, you know, filming in the beach, and then jump and ready in action, and then you'll have them jump back into the van. What kind of directing was that? God! Netflix and E1 Television are currently developing a new set of interconnected shows and films based on a long-running property. Jonathan Entwistle and of the effing world, and I am not okay with this, has been tapped as creative head. Y'all know that he's involved with Power Rangers, but I highly doubt that they're gonna end up, you know, I mean, I hope they don't add in time travel, because that's what really messed this movie up if they do that, because I'm not a fan of time traveling plots. It just feels stupid. Alright, so that was an interesting article. Now, to me, the 2017 movie lacked everything, because it just feels so dumb. I can agree on Johnny and Bosch for one thing. The suits in the 1995 movie were better than the 2017 versions. And both versions of 95 and the 2017 Zords sucked. Let me know what y'all thoughts in the comments down below. Did you enjoy my thoughts and opinions and my rants on this god-awful 2017 movie? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next content.